Picture standing at the edge of a desert, where the wind whispers secrets older than time itself, where the dust beneath your feet once bore the weight of the world's first cities, kings, and legends. This is Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, where civilization itself took its first breath. But what if I told you that beneath the sands and scattered across this ancient landscape, 25 forgotten wonders still stand, waiting to be rediscovered? These aren't just ruins, they're silent storytellers holding tales of empires that shaped humanity, of inventions that changed the course of history, and of mysteries that still baffle us today. Think about it, while Egypt's pyramids and Rome's Colosseum steal the spotlight, Mesopotamia's marvels have slipped into the shadows until now. From towering ziggurats that once touched the heavens to hidden libraries where the first words of literature were etched into clay, these wonders are more than relics. They're time capsules preserving the genius of a people who gave us writing, law, even the wheel. Yet somehow their legacy has faded from memory, overshadowed by the passage of millennia. But today, we're pulling back the curtain on these forgotten treasures, venturing into a world where every stone has a story to tell. This isn't just a journey through ruins, it's a voyage into the heart of human ingenuity. Imagine walking the same streets as Hammurabi, standing in the shadow of the Ishtar Gate, or deciphering the secrets of cuneiform tablets that have survived thousands of years. These wonders aren't lost, they're hidden in plain sight, scattered across modern-day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, waiting for those who know where to look. So, if you're ready to uncover the echoes of a civilization that laid the foundation for the modern world, stay with me. Because by the end of this exploration, you'll see Mesopotamia not as a footnote in history, but as a living, breathing testament to what humanity can achieve and what we've almost forgotten. Rising from the plains of southern Iraq like a stairway to the gods, the great Ziggurat of Ur is one of Mesopotamia's most astonishing survivors. Built over 4,000 years ago by King Ur-Nammu, this towering structure wasn't just architecture. It was a bridge between heaven and earth where priests performed sacred rituals to honor Nana, the moon god. Picture a pyramid but with terraced levels climbing toward the sky, each step painted in vibrant colors now lost to time. At its peak stood a temple where offerings were made, and the fate of the city was believed to unfold under the watchful eyes of the divine. What makes this ziggurat so remarkable isn't just its age or scale, though its original height of around 100 feet would have dwarfed everything around it, but how it reveals the sophistication of Mesopotamian engineering. The core wasn't just stacked mud bricks, it was a carefully designed system with baked bricks and bitumen to shield against erosion, a waterproof layer that helped it endure floods, wars, and even centuries buried under desert sands. When British archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavated it in the 1920s, he uncovered staircases so precisely aligned that they still guide modern visitors upward, just as ancient worshippers once climbed. Yet the ziggurat's survival is as much a story of human determination as it is of ancient ingenuity. After standing forgotten for ages, it faced new threats in the 20th century, from weathering to conflict. But preservation efforts have given it a second life. Teams have painstakingly restored its crumbling facade, using traditional methods to repair the same bricks that Ur-Nammu's laborers shaped by hand. Today, it stands not just as a relic, but as a testament to what happens when we choose to protect our shared history. Walking its reconstructed steps, you can almost hear the echoes of chanting priests and feel the weight of a civilization that believed mountains could be moved, or in this case built to reach the divine. Now shift your gaze from the sun-baked ziggurats of Ur to a spectacle of cobalt and gold, the Ishtar Gate, Babylon's crowning jewel. Imagine walking through this monumental entrance in its heyday, surrounded by walls shimmering with lapis lazuli blue, adorned with golden lions, dragons, and bulls that seem to breathe beneath the Mesopotamian sun. Built under King Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 years before the Common Era, this wasn't just a gate, It was a declaration of power, a portal where mythology and monarchy intertwined. What made the Ishtar Gate unforgettable wasn't just its size, though its original height of nearly 50 feet would have stunned any approaching traveler, but its artistry. Thousands of glazed bricks, each tinted with a precise mix of minerals to achieve that signature blue, formed a mosaic of sacred animals: the Lion of Ishtar, goddess of war and love; the Mushachik letter 1E2, Bushachik dragon, a hybrid creature symbolizing Marduk, Babylon's chief god; and the Bull of Adad, storm deity of thunder and rain. These weren't mere decorations. They were divine protectors, believed to ward off evil as they gleamed under torchlight during processions like the New Year's festival, when statues of gods paraded through the gate to bless the city. Yet the gate story took a twist worthy of its mythological figures. After Babylon's fall, it vanished beneath the sands until German archaeologist Robert Koldewey unearthed its fragments in the early 20th century. But here's the twist: the most complete reconstruction isn't in Iraq. It's in Berlin's Pergamon Museum, where a painstakingly reassembled section lets visitors stand beneath its towering arch today. Critics argue over whether these displaced treasures should return home, but what's undeniable is how the gate's legacy transcends borders. Even in fragments, its glazed tiles retain a luster that outlasted empires, a testament to craftsmen who mastered ceramic chemistry millennia before modern science. Babylon's original site still holds traces of the gate's foundations, with modern reconstructions hinting at its former glory. But to stand before even a portion of the Ishtar Gate is to glimpse a civilization that didn't just build, it enchanted. Every brick whispers of a time when walls weren't barriers but canvases, when cities weren't just inhabited but mythologized, and perhaps that's the true wonder: how a structure meant to awe ancient visitors still leaves us breathless today, as if Nebuchadnezzar's spell never faded. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, even the name conjures images of lush terraces rising like a green mountain against the desert sky, waterfalls tumbling through exotic plants, an engineering marvel so breathtaking it earned a spot among the ancient world's 7 wonders. Yet here's the twist: despite its legendary status, no physical trace of these gardens has ever been found in Babylon. Not a single brick, not a scrap of irrigation piping, not even a definitive mention in Babylonian records. So how did a wonder so famous vanish without leaving a shred of evidence? The mystery begins with the stories themselves. The most detailed accounts come from Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, writing centuries after the garden supposedly flourished. They describe a paradise built by King Nebuchadnezzar II for his homesick wife, Amytis, who longed for the forests of her homeland. Picture tiered gardens supported by vast stone terraces, with complex pulley systems drawing water from the Euphrates to feed trees, vines, and flowers from across the empire, a feat requiring engineering knowledge that seemed impossible for the 6th century before the Common Era. But here's where skepticism creeps in. Babylon's own chronicles never mention these gardens. Not a single cuneiform tablet found in the city's ruins references their construction, maintenance, or even existence. This absence has led scholars down 2 paths. Some argue the gardens were purely mythical, a romantic exaggeration by Greek travelers dazzled by Babylon's grandeur. Others propose they might have been real, but not in Babylon. One compelling theory points to Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire, where archaeologists uncovered an elaborate system of aqueducts and terraces near the palace of King Sennacherib. His inscriptions boast of a wonder for all peoples, with water screws lifting streams to gardens stocked with rare plants. Could this have been the true Hanging Gardens, misattributed to Babylon over time? The debate rages on, fueled by tantalizing clues but no smoking gun. What makes the mystery even more fascinating is the sheer audacity of the concept. If the gardens did exist, they'd represent a staggering achievement not just in horticulture, but in hydraulics and architecture. Imagine the labor required to haul soil and water to such heights in a region where temperatures routinely scorch past 100 degrees. The gardens would have been a defiance of nature, a statement of human will over the harsh Mesopotamian landscape. And perhaps that's why the legend endures, whether fact or fiction. The idea of a paradise suspended in midair speaks to something timeless in us, the dream of creating beauty where none should thrive. Today, the search continues. Satellite imagery, soil analysis, and re-examined texts offer glimmers of hope, but the gardens remain as elusive as ever. Maybe they're buried beneath modern construction, waiting for a future archaeologist's shovel. Or maybe they never existed at all, a mirage of history, as fleeting as the mist from those fabled waterfalls. Either way, their legacy persists, reminding us that some wonders aren't just about what we can touch, but what we dare to imagine. Deep beneath the ruins of Ur lies a silent, golden kingdom, not of the living but of the dead. In the 1920s, archaeologist Leonard Woolley made a discovery so staggering it rewrote our understanding of Sumerian royalty. 16 royal tombs, their chambers glittering with treasures unimaginable, their corridors lined with skeletons that told a story both magnificent and haunting. These weren't just burials, they were carefully orchestrated journeys into the afterlife, where kings and queens were laid to rest alongside their retinues in a ritual so deliberate, it sends shivers down the spine even today. Among these tombs, one stood out, the grave of Queen Puabi. When Woolley's team brushed away the dust, they uncovered a woman adorned in gold, a headdress of delicate leaves, lapis lazuli beads from distant Afghanistan, and a cloak strung with golden rings. But what truly stunned the world were the bodies surrounding her. 5 armed guards, 13 attendants, even oxen and chariots, all arranged as if frozen in a macabre tableau, ready to serve her in the next world. This was no hasty burial. These sacrifices were deliberate, possibly even voluntary, hinting at a belief so powerful it compelled people to walk willingly into their own deaths. The treasures tell their own story. Puabi's lapis lazuli, a stone so rare it traveled thousands of miles to reach Ur, speaks of a trade network spanning continents. Her intricate goldwork reveals Sumerian metalworking skills rivaling Egypt's, yet the real revelation lies in the smaller details, the gaming boards buried with her, suggesting leisure in the afterlife, the silver lyres, their bull-headed designs echoing myths of the underworld. Each artifact is a puzzle piece, reconstructing a culture that saw death not as an end, but as a continuation of status and power. But the tombs also force us to confront darker questions. Why would servants, musicians, even children consent to such a fate? Some scholars argue they were drugged, others point to texts describing a joyous journey to serve the divine in death. What's undeniable is the absolute authority these rulers held not just over life, but over death itself. The tombs of Ur don't just showcase wealth, they expose the spine of Sumerian society, where loyalty transcended mortality, and where the afterlife was as meticulously planned as the cities of the living. Today, Puabi's headdress gleams behind museum glass, a silent testament to a queen who demanded eternity. But the greater wonder isn't the gold, it's the humanity preserved in these tombs. The way a musician's hands still clutch their instrument, or how a guard's skeleton leans protectively toward their ruler. These aren't just relics, they're frozen moments offering a glimpse into a world where death was simply another kingdom to be conquered. And perhaps that's the most astonishing thing of all, how 4,000 years later these silent graves still speak so loudly. Perched atop a massive stepped platform in the heart of ancient Uruk, the White Temple rises like a beacon against the Mesopotamian sky, a stark, alabaster monument to Anu, the god who ruled the heavens. Built over 5,000 years ago, this temple wasn't just a place of worship, it was a statement of human ambition, a defiant reach toward the divine. Picture a structure so elevated that climbing its ramps would have felt like ascending to another realm. each step distancing you from the earthly bustle below and drawing you closer to the celestial. The temple's very orientation was deliberate, its corners aligned precisely with the cardinal directions, a testament to the Sumerians' grasp of astronomy and their desire to harmonize the sacred with the cosmic. What makes the White Temple unforgettable isn't just its age or scale, though its 40-foot-high platform would have dominated the flat plains for miles, but the symbolism etched into every brick. The temple's whitewashed walls, polished to reflect the sun's glare, weren't merely aesthetic, they were a visual echo of the heavens, a mirror for Anu's domain. Inside, the walls likely bore traces of vibrant murals and intricate mosaics, now lost to time, depicting gods and myths that shaped Sumerian cosmology. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of altars and offering tables, suggesting rituals where priests mediated between mortals and the sky god, perhaps even channeling celestial omens through cracks in sacrificial animal bones. Yet the temple's ruins tell another story, one of resilience. Unlike later ziggurats that crumbled into soft mounds, the White Temple's core platform endures, its compacted mud bricks fused into something nearly stone-like by millennia of sun and wind. Walking its remnants today, you can still trace the outlines of its chambers, the grooves where door pivots once turned, even the faint depressions of footsteps worn into the stairs by generations of worshippers. It's a haunting reminder that while empires fell and gods faded, this place never truly surrendered to time. The temple also whispers of Uruk's golden age, when the city birthed writing, bureaucracy, and large-scale urban planning. The same hands that pressed cuneiform into clay tablets likely raised this temple, blending spiritual and civic power into a single vision. And here's the striking part: the White Temple wasn't alone. Beneath it lie layers of older temples, each built atop the last like a ladder of devotion stretching back into prehistory. This wasn't just architecture, it was a dialogue with eternity, each generation answering the one before with higher walls, grander ramps, and brighter whitewash, as if trying again and again to touch the sky. Today, the temple's platform stands as a sentinel over the ruins of Uruk, its stark geometry a counterpoint to the rolling dunes. There are no glittering gold relics here, no royal tombs, just the bones of a structure that once anchored a civilization's dreams. But perhaps that's the point. The White Temple doesn't need adornment to awe. Its power lies in its simplicity, its refusal to vanish. It remains what it always was, a bridge between earth and heaven, a monument not just to a god, but to the human hunger to reach beyond what we can see. Carved into a towering slab of black diorite nearly 4,000 years ago, the Code of Hammurabi isn't just a list of laws, it's a revolution frozen in stone. Picture this, a 7-foot-tall pillar, its surface meticulously inscribed with cuneiform script, crowned by a bas-relief of Hammurabi himself receiving divine authority from the sun god Shamash. This stele didn't just record rules, it proclaimed a radical idea that justice should be written, transparent, and apply to all, from the highest noble to the lowliest farmer. Discovered in 1901 in modern-day Iran, where it had been hauled off as war spoils centuries earlier, the stele's survival is nothing short of miraculous. Unlike clay tablets that crumble or wood that rots, diorite endures, preserving 282 laws that reveal the bones of Babylonian society. The code's brilliance lies in its granularity. It doesn't just forbid murder or theft, it dives into the messy realities of daily life. If a surgeon's operation goes wrong, their hand is severed as penalty. If a builder's house collapses and kills the owner, the builder faces execution. Even beer, Babylon's staple drink, gets regulation. Tavern keepers who overcharge customers are drowned as punishment. At first glance, these laws seem brutal eye-for-eye justice at its most literal, but look closer and you'll find nuance. The code distinguishes intent from accident, ranks penalties by social class, and even includes provisions for women's rights in inheritance and divorce, astonishing for the 18th century before the Common Era. Hammurabi's real innovation wasn't the laws themselves. Other Mesopotamian codes predate his, but their public display. By erecting steles across his empire, he transformed justice from whispered traditions into something tangible. Citizens could point to the words, debate them, hold rulers accountable. This shift from oral custom to written law echoes in every modern courtroom. The very concept of a legal code, from Rome's 12 tables to Napoleon's civil code, traces its lineage back to that black pillar. Even the structure feels eerily familiar, a preamble establishing authority, the laws themselves, and an epilogue cursing future rulers who dare alter them, a blueprint still used in legislation today. Yet the stele's journey is as dramatic as its content. After Babylon's fall, Elamite invaders looted it as a trophy, dragging it to Susa where it lay buried for millennia. When French archaeologists unearthed it, they found cracks where someone had tried, and failed, to erase portions of the text. Now housed in the Louvre, its glass case reflects visitors from every corner of the globe, a silent witness to how ideas outlast empires. Replicas stand in universities and museums worldwide, but the original's weighty presence reminds us that law isn't just about words. It's about the physical, unshakable authority of those words made stone. What's often overlooked is how the code mirrors the society it governed. Fines are calculated in silver or barley, the currencies of the time. Laws address river floods and irrigation disputes, the lifeblood of Mesopotamia. Even the stele's material speaks volumes. Diorite, imported from distant Oman, symbolizing the king's reach and permanence. Modern legal scholars still debate its legacy. Some see the first glimmers of due process. Others note its harsh inequalities, like lower compensation for injuries to slaves. But perhaps its greatest lesson is timeless. That civilization thrives when rules are clear, visible, and bigger than any one person. Standing before Hammurabi Stele today, you're not just looking at ancient text. You're seeing the moment humanity decided fairness shouldn't depend on a ruler's whim, that some truths are hard enough to carve in stone. The cracks and chips only deepen its power, proving that even after 4,000 years, the idea of justice remains unbroken. The walls of Ashurbanipal's palace in Nineveh come alive with a spectacle of violence and precision. The Assyrian Lion Hunt Reliefs, where stone tells a story of royal power carved in exquisite, brutal detail. Imagine walking these halls in the 7th century before the Common Era, the flicker of torchlight animating scenes of charging lions, flying arrows, and the king himself standing triumphant over nature's mightiest beasts. These aren't mere decorations, they're propaganda in alabaster, a visual epic designed to immortalize the ruler as both warrior and protector. What sets these reliefs apart is their startling realism. Unlike the stiff, symbolic art of earlier civilizations, Assyrian craftsmen captured movement with breathtaking accuracy, muscles straining beneath lion hides, the tension of a bowstring at the moment of release, even the panic in an animal's eyes as it turns to face its fate. The lions, imported from distant lands for staged hunts, are rendered with such anatomical precision that modern zoologists can identify their subspecies. But this artistry served a darker purpose, to showcase the king's dominion over chaos. Each dying lion, each arrow piercing flesh, reinforced the message that Assyria's ruler could tame even the wildest threats to his empire. The hunts themselves were carefully orchestrated theater. Lions were released into enclosed arenas where the king, armed with spears and bows, faced them before an audience of nobles and diplomats. The reliefs omit the cages and handlers, framing the encounters as raw battles of will. In one famous panel, Ashurbanipal grasps a lion by the throat while plunging a dagger into its chest, a pose echoing the god Ninurta's mythical victories. The symbolism is unmistakable. The king doesn't just rule men, he masters the forces of nature itself. Yet these carvings also whisper of vulnerability. Scholars note the absence of wounded or dead Assyrians, a deliberate omission. the lions never strike back successfully, though historical accounts mention hunters maimed or killed. Even propaganda has its limits. The reliefs also hint at ecological shifts. Some lions appear emaciated, suggesting declining populations from overhunting, a poignant detail in what was meant to glorify unchecked conquest. Today, the British Museum's Assyrian galleries hold the most complete panels, their ochre-tinged stone still bearing traces of original pigment. Running a hand along the grooves, you can feel the chisel marks where artisans worked millennia ago, turning slabs of rock into narrative. The lions, frozen mid-roar, seem to defy time itself. These reliefs did more than flaunt royal ego. They birthed a visual language of power that would echo through Persian, Greek, and Roman art. But perhaps their greatest legacy is how they humanize a civilization often reduced to ruthless empire. In the quieter panels, a lioness dying beside her cubs, a wounded beast limping away, we glimpse an unexpected pathos. The artists, perhaps unwillingly, recorded not just the king's glory but the cost of it. These stones don't just celebrate conquest, they immortalize the price paid by all caught in its path, beast and man alike. Towering over the plains of Babylon like a broken promise, the ruins of Borsippa's Ziggurat have long been shrouded in legend, often whispered as the true inspiration behind the Tower of Babel myth. Dedicated to Nabu, the god of wisdom and writing, this temple wasn't just a place of worship. It was a beacon for scholars, scribes, and seekers of knowledge across Mesopotamia. Even in its ruined state, the structure commands attention. Layers of baked brick, now weathered to fiery reds and ochres, rise in jagged tiers, their edges softened by centuries of wind and sand. At its peak, where a gleaming blue-tiled shrine once stood, only fragments remain, a haunting reminder of how time devours even the mightiest symbols of human ambition. Step closer and the temple's scholarly legacy comes alive. Unlike other ziggurats built for celestial gods, Nabu's temple thrived as a center of earthly intellect. Tablets recovered from its archives reveal a bustling scriptorium where priests studied astronomy, composed poetry, and copied texts ranging from medical remedies to epic myths. The very walls seemed to hum with activity, scribes dipping reed styluses into wet clay, scholars debating the motion of planets, traders negotiating the exchange of knowledge alongside spices and textiles. This was Mesopotamia's equivalent of a grand university, where the written word was both sacred currency and practical tool. The link to the Tower of Babel legend isn't just poetic coincidence. Greek historian Herodotus described Borsippa's ziggurat as a tower reaching to heaven, while the Book of Genesis echoes the pride and subsequent scattering tied to such structures. Archaeologists have found evidence supporting this connection. Inscriptions referencing Nabu's role as a divine scribe, tablets detailing multilingual translation efforts, even construction records showing workers from disparate regions laboring side by side. Could these real-life fragments have inspired the biblical tale of linguistic chaos? The parallels are too striking to ignore, yet what truly sets Borsippa apart is its resilience. Unlike Babylon's grander monuments, this ziggurat was never fully rebuilt, yet its decay tells its own story. Cracks zigzagging through the bricks reveal ancient repair attempts, proof that generations refused to let wisdom crumble entirely. Even Nebuchadnezzar II left inscriptions boasting of restoration, calling Nabu's temple the Eternal House. Today, climbing its unstable slopes feels like traversing a parchment of history, each step uncovering layers of scholarly devotion, imperial pride, and the quiet stubbornness of ideas that outlast empires. The wonder here isn't just in the bricks but in the legacy they sheltered. When armies sacked cities and dynasties fell, Borsippa's scribes kept writing. Their tablets, now scattered across global museums, preserve everything from merchant contracts to hymns, proof that Nabu's real temple wasn't the ziggurat at all, but the collective mind of Mesopotamia itself. The structure may be broken, but the wisdom it championed, that still stands tall. Rising from the dusty plains just west of modern Baghdad, the Dur-Kurgalzu Ziggurat stands as a testament to a dynasty often erased from history's spotlight, the Kassites. While Babylon and Ur dominate Mesopotamia's architectural fame, this towering structure, built in the 14th century before the Common Era, showcases an engineering marvel that rivals its more celebrated cousins. Unlike the sun-baked mud bricks of earlier ziggurats, Dur-Kurgalzu's core shimmers with a forgotten innovation. Baked bricks fired with such precision that they've resisted erosion for over 3,000 years. Walk its perimeter today and you'll notice something extraordinary. The bricks bear the fingerprints of their makers, tiny grooves where workers pressed clay into molds, leaving behind whispers of individual hands in what was meant to be an immortal monument. What makes this ziggurat truly unique isn't just its durability, but its purpose. While most Mesopotamian temples honored gods, Dur-Kurgalzu doubled as a political statement. The Kassites, foreign rulers who conquered Babylon, constructed it as a declaration of legitimacy, a physical bridge between their origins in the Zagros Mountains and their adopted Mesopotamian identity. The stairways align with celestial events, yes, but they also point deliberately toward Kassite homeland peaks, weaving geography and power into sacred architecture. Even the bricks whisper propaganda. Stamped with the name of King Kurgalzu, they ensured every layer literally bore his mark. Yet for all its grandeur, why does this ziggurat languish in obscurity? Partly because history favors victors, the Kassites were eventually toppled, their monuments overshadowed by Babylonian revivals, but also because its treasures were stripped bare. Unlike Ur's golden tombs or Babylon's glazed tiles, Dur-Kurgalzu's artifacts were scattered by looters centuries ago. One haunting exception, a single shattered statue of a Kassite king, unearthed by archaeologists, its face deliberately defaced, likely by successors erasing their predecessor's legacy. The real wonder here isn't just the structure, but the story etched into its bricks. Those fingerprints, they belong to laborers conscripted from across the empire, their identities preserved in clay. The subtle color variations in the baked bricks, evidence of seasonal construction, with summer's hotter kilns producing darker hues. Even the ziggurat's isolation speaks volumes, built not in a city center, but on a barren plateau, as if the Kassites wanted their monument to stand apart, defiant against time and memory. Today, as Baghdad's sprawl creeps closer, the ziggurat remains a stubborn sentinel, its staircases leading not just to a vanished temple, but to a lost chapter of resilience and reinvention. Climbing its weathered steps, you're tracing the path of a people who built not just for the gods, but to prove they belonged, and perhaps that's the most human wonder of all. Perched atop a 50-foot-high mound in modern-day Iraqi Kurdistan, the Erbil Citadel isn't just another archaeological site. It's a living, breathing timeline, its walls whispering 6,000 years of unbroken human habitation. Imagine standing in a place that has witnessed the rise and fall of Assyrian kings, the march of Alexander the Great's armies, the footsteps of Silk Road merchants, and the echo of modern-day cafe chatter, all without ever being abandoned. This isn't a ruin frozen in glass cases. It's a labyrinth of homes, mosques, and bathhouses layered like chapters in the world's oldest book, each era's architecture pressed atop the last like sedimentary rock. What makes the citadel extraordinary isn't just its age, but its design, a masterclass in Mesopotamian urban resilience. The entire structure is a man-made hill or tell, formed by generations rebuilding atop crumbled walls after earthquakes, sieges, or simply the passage of time. Walk its narrow alleys today and you'll tread not on dirt, but on centuries of compacted pottery shards, charcoal from ancient hearths, and the faint outlines of streets that once bustled with Babylonian traders. The layout reveals an ingenious circular plan, with homes radiating outward like spokes from a central core, a defensive strategy forcing invaders into deadly funnels while maximizing communal space. Yet the citadel's real magic lies in its continuity. Unlike Mesopotamia's ghost cities, Erbil never became a relic. Ottoman-era houses with ornate wooden balconies sit snug against medieval Islamic arches, which in turn conceal older Assyrian foundations. In one courtyard, archaeologists found a working clay oven, its design unchanged from those used 4,000 years ago. Even the citadel's name, Kalat Erbil, echoes its ancient roots derived from Aba Ilu, Assyrian for four gods, referencing the deities worshipped here when the city was a spiritual hub. Modern preservation efforts reveal startling details. When workers peeled back plaster in a 20th century home, they uncovered cuneiform inscribed bricks from King Ashurnasirpal II's reign. Beneath a mosque's courtyard, ground-penetrating radar detected a buried Zoroastrian temple. This isn't just layering, it's architectural palimpsest where every restoration project becomes an excavation. UNESCO designation as a World Heritage Site calls it a rare example of an intact urban settlement, but that's an understatement. It's a fractal of history. Zoom in on any corner, and you'll find microcosms of empires. Today, the citadel balances past and present. Artisans still craft pottery using Neolithic techniques in shadowy workshops, while galleries showcase contemporary Kurdish art. The scent of cardamom coffee from cafe terraces blends with the tang of wet clay from ongoing digs. It's this duality that makes Erbil unique. Not a museum piece, but a place where the distant past isn't behind glass, it's in the foundations of homes, the curve of staircases worn smooth by millennia of footsteps. The citadel doesn't just showcase Mesopotamian urban planning. It proves that the greatest civilizations aren't those that vanish, but those that adapt, endure, and keep writing their story in the same soil where it began. Tucked away in the shadow of Babylon's grander monuments, the Temple of Ninmak was nearly lost to history until a chance dig in the early 20th century uncovered a sanctuary where healing and faith once intertwined. This wasn't just another shrine, it was a hub of Babylonian medicine where the goddess Ninmak, revered as a divine midwife and healer, presided over rituals that blended prayer with practical remedies. Picture a courtyard lined with fragrant herbs, clay jars storing medicinal pastes, and priestesses who doubled as physicians, their knowledge passed down through generations. The temple's rediscovery peeled back layers of myth to reveal a civilization that saw no divide between the spiritual and the scientific. What makes Ninmak's temple extraordinary isn't just its age, though it thrived over 2,500 years ago, but the artifacts left behind. Archaeologists found diagnostic tablets inscribed with symptoms and cures, some eerily accurate by modern standards. One prescription detailed a poultice of honey, crushed herbs, and resin for wound care, a formula later proven to have antibacterial properties. Another tablet described childbirth techniques, with Ninmak invoked as both divine protector and metaphorical guide. These weren't superstitions, they were early medical records, evidence of a system where diagnoses were meticulously recorded and treatments refined through observation. The temple's layout itself tells a story of holistic care. Small chambers adjacent to the main altar held bathing pools, likely used for therapeutic soaks infused with medicinal plants. A hidden room contained hundreds of terracotta votives, miniature body parts offered by supplicants seeking healing for specific ailments, but the most striking discovery: a series of drainage channels designed to keep the space clean, a rudimentary but deliberate approach to hygiene that predated Hippocrates by centuries. This was a place where ritual purity and physical cleanliness were intertwined, foreshadowing principles we now consider foundational to medicine. Ninmak's legacy extends beyond bricks and tablets. Her cult thrived during Babylon's golden age under Nebuchadnezzar II, who rebuilt her temple as part of his grand urban renewal. The goddess's influence even reached royal circles. Historical texts suggest queens and noblewomen visited the temple for fertility blessings, blending elite patronage with grassroots devotion. Yet after Babylon's fall, the site was gradually buried under wind-blown silt. its healing lore fading into obscurity until modern tools could decipher its secrets. Today, the temple's partially restored walls stand as a quiet counterpoint to Babylon's more flamboyant ruins. But its true marvel lies in the worldview it represents, a time when medicine was sacred, when healers saw no contradiction between invoking a goddess and applying a bandage. The Temple of Ninmak doesn't just showcase ancient healthcare, it challenges the modern assumption that science and spirituality must live in separate spheres. Walking its excavated halls, you can almost hear the whispers of priestesses recording symptoms, grinding remedies, and tending to the sick with hands guided by both faith and reason, a forgotten wonder that still speaks to the timeless human quest for healing. Beneath the scorching sun of northern Iraq, the palace of Ashurnasirpal II at Nimrud once stood as a symphony of power carved in stone, its walls echoing with the footsteps of kings, its gates guarded by colossal lamashu statues with the bodies of bulls, the wings of eagles, and the faces of men. Built in the 9th century before the Common Era, this wasn't just a royal residence, it was a propaganda machine in alabaster designed to awe allies and intimidate enemies. Imagine entering its grand halls, where every surface shimmered with polished reliefs depicting military conquests, lion hunts, and scenes of divine favor, each panel meticulously painted in lapis blues and crimson reds. The air would have carried the scent of cedar imported from Lebanon, the floors adorned with exotic carpets from lands the Assyrians had subdued. This was more than a palace, it was the beating heart of an empire. At its entrance stood the lamashu, towering hybrids of myth and muscle, each weighing up to 30 tons. These weren't mere decorations, they were supernatural sentinels, believed to ward off evil spirits with their piercing, inlaid stone eyes. Carved from single blocks of gypsum, their curved beards and intricate wing feathers showcased a level of craftsmanship that defied the era's tools. But their true genius lay in perspective. When viewed from the front, they appeared rigid and regal. From the side, they seemed to stride forward, a clever illusion meant to project both stability and motion. For centuries, they endured as silent witnesses to history, surviving invasions, earthquakes, and the slow erosion of time. Then came 2015. In a devastating campaign to erase pre-Islamic heritage, militants targeted Nimrud with bulldozers, sledgehammers, and explosives. The world watched in horror as footage showed the lamashu being toppled, their ancient faces shattered into rubble. The palace's exquisite reliefs, some depicting the earliest known depictions of angels, were pulverized into dust. It was an act of cultural annihilation, a deliberate strike against human memory itself. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Not all was lost. Years before the destruction, archaeologists had documented the site in painstaking detail using 3D scanning technology. Museum collections worldwide held rescued artifacts, ivory carvings, cuneiform tablets, even fragments of the palace's original paint, all preserved by chance or foresight. Among the most poignant survivors are the Nimrud ivories, a cache of over 1,000 intricately carved panels once adorning furniture and walls. Discovered in the palace's storerooms, these ivories blended Assyrian, Egyptian, and Phoenician artistic styles, proof of the empire's vast trade networks. Many were smuggled out of Iraq during conflicts, only to surface decades later in museum auctions. Today, efforts are underway to digitally reconstruct the palace using photogrammetry, stitching together old photographs and scans to create a virtual time capsule. Meanwhile, local archaeologists brave ongoing risks to sift through the wreckage, recovering fragments as small as a fingernail, each one a whisper from the past refusing to be silenced. The tragedy of Nimrud forces us to confront a difficult truth. Civilizations are fragile, but it also reveals their stubborn resilience. The lamashu may lie broken, but their image endures on museum posters, academic papers, even protest art against cultural erasure. The palace's grandeur lives on in the meticulous sketches of Victorian explorers and the memories of Iraqi elders who played among its ruins as children. Nimrod's legacy isn't just in stone, it's in the collective determination to remember. When militants swung their hammers, they didn't account for the fact that some wonders transcend physical form. They become ideas, and ideas are indestructible. Floating like mirages atop the shimmering waters of southern Iraq's marshlands, the reed houses of the marsh Arabs have stood for over 5,000 years, living relics of a way of life that mirrors the very cradle of civilization. These aren't just homes, they're masterpieces of ancient engineering, woven from the same reeds that once lined the banks of Sumerian canals. Picture towering arched structures called mudhifs, their ribs bent into perfect curves without a single nail or beam, lashed together with ropes made from date palms. Step inside and the air is surprisingly cool, the thick reed walls insulating against the desert's blistering heat while allowing breezes to ripple through like nature's own air conditioning. This is architecture born from necessity, where every material is borrowed from the water and returned to it without a trace, a lesson in sustainability millennia ahead of its time. The genius of these structures lies in their harmony with the environment. Marsh Arabs or Madden harvest kasab reeds in autumn when they're strongest, bundling them into pillars that can support entire roofs. The floors, floating platforms of woven reeds, rising and falling with the seasonal floods as they've done since the days when Uruk's ziggurats were new. What's astonishing is how little the design has changed. Cuneiform tablets from describe similar dwellings, suggesting marsh Arab architecture may be the last living link to Sumerian domestic life. Even the layout echoes ancient beliefs. The mudhif's entrance always faces downstream, a tradition rooted in old Mesopotamian customs about the flow of spiritual energy. But these floating villages aren't frozen in time, they're fighting for survival. In the 1990s, Saddam Hussein drained over 90% of the marshes, turning lush waterways into cracked earth and forcing thousands of Madden into exile. The reed houses dependent on water seemed destined to vanish. Then, a miracle, after 2003, locals breached dikes and watched the waters return. Today, the marshes are reborn, but new threats loom. Climate change brings droughts, upstream dams in Turkey and Iran starve the rivers, pollution from oil fields seeps into the reeds. Yet the Madden adapt as they always have. Modern mudhifs now incorporate plastic sheeting for waterproofing, while solar panels dot some roofs, blending tradition with innovation. The real wonder here isn't just the houses, but the culture they shelter. Marsh Arab women still stitch intricate quilts from water buffalo wool, their geometric patterns echoing designs found on pottery from ancient Eridu. Fishermen glide through the reeds in Tarada canoes, their silhouettes unchanged from Assyrian reliefs. Even the language preserves echoes of Akkadian, the tongue of Hammurabi's Code. UNESCO has designated the marshes a World Heritage Site, calling them a refuge of biodiversity. But that barely captures their significance. These reeds are libraries, holding knowledge passed down through generations: how to read water currents like maps, which plants cure fevers, how to weave a home that breathes. Visiting the marshes today is like stepping into a living museum, minus the glass cases. The laughter of children learning to knot reeds mingles with the call of sacred ibises, birds once depicted in Sumerian glyphs. At dusk, the mudhifs glow golden, their reed walls absorbing the last light. It's a poignant sight, a civilization that gave the world cities, and writing still thrives in these floating villages, not as a relic, but as a resilient thread in humanity's tapestry. The marsh Arabs don't just build houses, they weave continuity, proving that some wonders don't crumble. They bend with the wind, rise with the water, and endure. High in the rugged Zagros Mountains, where the borders of modern Iraq and Iran meet, strange figures stare out from the cliffs, silent witnesses to a kingdom history nearly forgot. These are the rock reliefs of the Gutian Empire, carved over 4,000 years ago by a people who ruled Mesopotamia for a fleeting century, then vanished into legend. Unlike the grand monuments of Babylon or Assyria, these weathered carvings cling to remote canyon walls far from tourist trails. Some depict robed kings holding ceremonial weapons, others show enigmatic symbols that resemble constellations or tribal markings. For decades, archaeologists passed them by, assuming they were crude imitations of later Assyrian art. But look closer, and you'll realize these stones hold the only surviving voice of a civilization that history tried to erase. The Gutian, mentioned in Sumerian texts as fierce highland invaders who toppled the Akkadian Empire around 2190 before the Common Era, were long dismissed as barbaric raiders. Their reign was brief, just 100 years, and their language remains untranslated, leaving their reliefs as cryptic as cave paintings. Yet the precision of these carvings tells another story. At the site of Sar-Pol-e-Zahab, a towering figure raises a crescent-shaped weapon toward a symbol resembling a sun disk, his intricate braided beard echoing the style of Akkadian royalty he supposedly overthrew. Nearby, a procession of smaller figures carries offerings, proof the Gutian didn't just destroy. They adopted the rituals of the lands they conquered. The artistry is deliberate, the lines clean despite millennia of wind and rain. These weren't the scratches of nomads, they were statements of a people asserting their place in the world. What makes these reliefs truly puzzling are the recurring motifs. A dagger with a crescent pommel appears in multiple carvings, yet no such weapon has been found in excavations. Strange grids and dots cluster near celestial figures. Could they be star maps or records of battles? One relief at Kol Arash shows a figure standing atop a zigzag pattern that scholars now believe represents the Tigris River, suggesting the Gutian saw themselves as masters of Mesopotamia's lifeblood. The lack of inscriptions compounds the mystery. Without a Rosetta Stone to decode their symbols, archaeologists rely on comparisons to Babylonian and Elamite art, piecing together meaning like detectives with half-burned evidence. The neglect of these reliefs isn't just about their remote locations. For centuries, the Gutian were the villains of Mesopotamian history, their rule described in cuneiform tablets as a dark age of chaos. Later kings like Ur-Nammu boasted of driving them back to the mountains like scorpions. This bias shaped modern scholarship, with early archaeologists prioritizing the grander monuments of the civilized lowlands. Even today, political instability in the region keeps many Gutian sites off-limits, their secrets guarded by terrain and turmoil. Yet groundbreaking work is happening. Iraqi archaeologists using drone photography recently discovered 5 unknown reliefs near the Diyala River, including one showing a possible Gutian queen, a find that could rewrite assumptions about their society. Standing before these carvings today, you're not just looking at art, you're seeing a defiant rebuttal carved in stone. The Gutian didn't just raid and retreat, they commemorated their victories with the same tools as the empires they conquered. The very fact that their reliefs borrow Akkadian artistic conventions while adding distinct symbols like those mysterious daggers suggests a culture both adapting and asserting its identity. Perhaps the real darkness of the Gutian Dark Age isn't their rule, but our own failure to see them as more than footnotes. As new technologies like spectral imaging help uncover faded details in these cliffs, we may finally hear the story these stones have been whispering all along, not of destroyers, but of survivors who left their mark on history, quite literally in stone. Beneath the sun-baked plains of southern Iraq, hidden beneath centuries of silt and shifting sands, lies one of Mesopotamia's most overlooked engineering marvels, the sprawling canal network of the Sealand dynasty. Ruling a marshy kingdom where the Tigris and Euphrates once merged into a labyrinth of waterways, these forgotten monarchs transformed a volatile landscape into a thriving empire, not with towering monuments, but with something far more revolutionary: water control. Imagine a civilization so attuned to its environment that it didn't just adapt to the rivers, it tamed them, turning seasonal floods into a precise grid of agriculture and trade routes. While Babylon and Assyria dominate history books, the Sealand dynasty's hydraulic genius quietly shaped the region's survival for centuries. What set these canals apart wasn't just their scale, though some stretched over 50 miles, but their sophistication. Archaeologists mapping the remnants have uncovered sluice gates built with fitted limestone blocks, designed to regulate water flow with near-surgical precision. Unlike the simpler irrigation ditches of earlier Sumerian cities, Sealand's system featured branching secondary channels that could be opened or closed to direct water to specific fields, an innovation that doubled crop yields in this salt-prone region. Even more impressive, the use of natural levees raised riverbanks reinforced with woven reed mats to prevent breaches during floods, a technique still used by modern marsh dwellers. This wasn't just irrigation, it was ecological co-engineering, a dialogue between human ambition and the whims of the waters. The dynasty's crowning achievement lay in its capital, Dur-Enlil, a city literally built on water. Texts describe a Venice-like settlement where canals served as streets, and homes stood on artificial islands crafted from dredged mud and reeds. Recent satellite imaging has revealed ghostly outlines of this aquatic metropolis, with wide ceremonial avenues flanked by canals wide enough for 2 boats to pass, proof of a planned, almost mathematical urban layout. But the real stroke of genius was seasonal adaptation. Each summer, as water levels dropped, the kingdom's farmers shifted to drought-resistant barley, while winter floods were harnessed to flush salt buildup from the soil, a technique modern agronomists now recognize as revolutionary for arid climates. Why has this hydraulic mastery faded from memory? Blame the very element the Sealand rulers mastered, water. As rivers shifted course, their capital and canals were swallowed by marshes, leaving no grand ziggurats to impress later archaeologists. Even their royal records, written on perishable reed parchment rather than clay, disintegrated over time. Only a handful of cuneiform tablets from rival kingdoms hint at their prowess, with one Babylonian text grudgingly admitting the Sealanders made the bitter waters sweet. Yet their legacy trickled into history. Persian qanats, Roman aqueducts, even the intricate irrigation of medieval Baghdad, all owe a debt to these wetland innovators who proved civilization could flourish not in spite of the water but because of it. Today, as Iraq faces droughts exacerbated by climate change and upstream dams, archaeologists are urgently studying Sealand's ancient systems for solutions. Satellite thermal imaging has pinpointed buried canals still directing groundwater after 4,000 years, their clay linings intact. Farmers in the restored marshlands unknowingly echo Sealand techniques, using traditional reed weirs to manage salinity. The real marvel isn't just that these canals worked, it's that they worked sustainably, a lesson etched not in stone, but in the quiet rhythm of water meeting earth. In a world obsessed with monuments that scrape the sky, perhaps the greatest wonder is one that flowed unseen. Proving mastery isn't about conquering nature, but learning its language. At the heart of ancient Uruk, where dusty ruins now whisper of forgotten splendor, the Ina district once pulsed with color, music, and the footsteps of thousands, a sacred city within a city, dedicated to Inanna, the formidable goddess of love and war. Unlike the stark White Temple perched on its distant platform, Ina was a riot of mosaics and gold, its walls shimmering with geometric patterns in lapis and carnelian, its courtyards alive with the scent of incense and the murmur of prayers. Step through its reconstructed gates today, and you're walking the same flagstones where priestesses performed rituals that shaped Mesopotamia's earliest understanding of divinity and power. This wasn't just a temple complex, it was the spiritual engine of humanity's first true metropolis. What makes Ina extraordinary isn't merely its scale, though its 40-acre footprint dwarfed contemporary shrines, but how it crystallized the birth of urban life. Archaeologists have uncovered layer upon layer of reconstruction, each phase more ambitious than the last. The earliest structures, dating back to 3500 before the Common Era, were simple mud brick rooms. But within centuries, they evolved into towering facades adorned with cone mosaics, thousands of baked clay pieces pressed into plaster to create zigzagging patterns that mimicked woven reeds, a deliberate echo of Uruk's marshland origins. These weren't decorations, they were visual hymns to Inanna's dual nature, the life-giving fertility of the wetlands and the unyielding force of the storm. At the district's core stood the infamous stone temple, its foundations lined with imported limestone, a staggering luxury in a land where builders relied on river mud. Here, priests kept the sacred tablets believed to hold the blueprints of civilization itself, from kingship to basket weaving. The temple's inner sanctum housed Inanna's statue, likely draped in gold and lapis, her eyes inlaid with obsidian to pierce the souls of worshippers. Surrounding it, workshops produced votive figurines by the thousands, their wide-eyed faces reflecting a belief that divinity wasn't distant, but intimately present in every crafted object. Inanna's influence radiated far beyond religion, its scribes, operating in scriptoriums cooled by ingenious wind-catching vents, perfected cuneiform's earliest forms. Some of humanity's first recorded contracts, lists of temple offerings, deeds for land sales emerged from these chambers. The complex even boasted an early example of urban planning, a paved procession way wide enough for chariots, flanked by drainage channels to manage seasonal floods. This wasn't just a place to pray, it was a laboratory for the systems that would define cities for millennia, yet Inanna's most haunting legacy lies in its art. Among the rubble, archaeologists found the Mask of Uruk, a life-sized marble face, possibly depicting Inanna herself, with hauntingly realistic features that bridge the gap between deity and mortal. Nearby, the storied Walker vase, carved with a procession of offerings, reveals the hierarchy of Uruk's society. Nude priests presenting goods to the goddess, followed by livestock and harvests, a snapshot of the economy's sacred roots. These artifacts don't just depict ritual, they capture the moment when worship became institutionalized, when mythology began to shape marketplaces and laws. Today, the Inanna district stands in fragments, its mosaics faded, its ziggurats reduced to eroded mounds, but walk its perimeter at sunset when the low light picks out traces of pigment on ancient bricks, and you'll glimpse why this place mattered. Here, amid the world's first colonnades and storerooms, humanity learned to build not just shelters but meaning, to elevate mud and read into something that aspired to eternity. The wonder of Inanna isn't in its stones, but in the realization that every city since, from Babylon to New York, carries echoes of its ambition. The belief that gathering together in the shadow of something greater could make us more than just survivors. It could make us civilized. Buried somewhere beneath Iraq's shifting sands lies history's greatest vanishing act, the fabled city of Akkad, capital of the world's first true empire. For over 4,000 years, its location has teased archaeologists, its glory surviving only in cuneiform boasts and passing mentions. Sargon of Akkad, the empire's founder, carved a kingdom stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, yet his throne city remains as elusive as a desert mirage. The frustration is palpable. We've found uncovered Nineveh, mapped Babylon, but Akkad, the nerve center of an empire that reshaped Mesopotamia, refuses to be found. The search hinges on fragments of evidence scattered like breadcrumbs across millennia. Ancient tablets describe Akkad as a marvel of canals and towering temples, its docks bristling with ships from distant lands. Sargon himself bragged of daily deliveries from cedar-rich Lebanon and silver-laden Anatolia, suggesting a hub of staggering wealth. Later, Mesopotamian kings wrote of pilgrimages to Akkad's ruined temple centuries after its fall, treating it as a sacred relic of a golden age. Yet when modern archaeologists scour the Tigris-Euphrates plain, matching soil layers to historical accounts, the city slips through their fingers. The irony is cruel: the capital that standardized weights, measures, and even the Akkadian language itself left no address behind. Recent breakthroughs offer glimmers of hope. Satellite imagery has revealed anomalous soil discolorations near modern Baghdad, hinting at buried mud brick structures spanning over 2 square miles, a footprint fitting Akkad's legendary scale. Even more tantalizing are river sediment studies showing the Diola River, now a minor tributary, once ran strong enough to anchor a major port city. Then there's the pottery. Excavations at suspected sites yield shards stamped with Sargon's royal seal, their distribution patterns suggesting a dense urban center abruptly abandoned after the empire's collapse. But without a definitive marker, a monument, a royal inscription placing the name Akkad in stone, the mystery endures. Why does this city defy discovery? Blame Mesopotamia's mercurial rivers. The Tigris and Euphrates have shifted course countless times over centuries, swallowing entire settlements beneath silt. Akkad's fate may have been worse than burial. It could lie pulverized. Texts describe the Gutians, barbarian invaders, razing the city so thoroughly that later kings lamented nothing remained but the wind's howl. Alternatively, the answer might be hiding in plain sight. Some scholars argue Akkad wasn't a single city at all, but a shifting administrative complex that moved with the empire's needs, its name applied retroactively to Sargon's various capitals. The real wonder of Akkad isn't just its disappearance, it's how thoroughly its influence outlasted its walls. From Hammurabi's legal code to the Epic of Gilgamesh, Akkadian became Mesopotamia's lingua franca, its cuneiform script etching laws and literature into eternity. Even the Bible preserves echoes of Sargon's legacy in tales of mighty rulers brought low. Every time archaeologists uncover a new shard or satellite image, the hope reignites. Perhaps this will be the clue that finally pins Akkad to the map. Until then, the city lingers as both ghost and foundation, its physical form lost but its imprint deep in the DNA of civilization itself. To seek Akkad is to chase the shadow of empire, a reminder that some wonders aren't measured by what we find, but by how fiercely we keep looking. Etched into a palm-sized clay tablet over 2,500 years ago, the Babylonian map of the world isn't just the oldest known attempt to chart the earth. It's a window into how an entire civilization imagined their place in the cosmos. At first glance, it looks deceptively simple, a flat disk encircled by a serpentine ocean labeled bitter water, with Babylon proudly centered like the bullseye of creation. But peel back the cuneiform inscriptions, and you'll discover a tapestry of myth, science, and imperial swagger woven into its tiny surface. This wasn't meant for navigation. It was a declaration of cosmic order where geography and theology blurred into one. What makes this map astonishing isn't its accuracy. By modern standards, it's wildly wrong, but its layered symbolism, the 7 triangular spikes radiating from the outer ocean. Those represent mythical lands beyond the known world, each annotated with cryptic notes like "place where the sun is not seen" or "land of winged beasts." Babylon sits not just at the center, but atop a winding Euphrates River that splits the disk vertically, mirroring the Mesopotamian belief that rivers were the veins of the earth god's body. Even the ocean serpent isn't arbitrary. It echoes the chaos dragon Tiamat from the Enuma Elish creation epic, her watery chaos tamed by the gods to form the habitable world. Yet the map's real genius lies in its annotations. Tiny cuneiform labels dot the terrain, some practical, 6 leagues between cities, others bewildering, "Here dwells the Scorpion people." One corner describes a ruined city, haunted by the ghosts of kings, possibly a nod to Akkad, the lost capital. Another marks a distant marsh where no man travels, likely referencing the real-world swamps of southern Iraq that even Babylonians considered untamable. These aren't cartographic errors, they're clues to a world view where every landmark held both physical and spiritual meaning. The scribe even included scale markings, proving they understood the concept of measurement, even if their world was barely larger than modern-day Syria. The map's survival is its own miracle. Unearthed in the late 19th century near the ruins of Sippar, it was likely a scribe's training exercise, a copy of a much older document, baked hard by time into accidental permanence. Scholars now recognize it as part of a larger tradition. Fragments of similar maps have surfaced, suggesting Babylonian scholars debated geography as rigorously as astronomy. One fragment shows constellations superimposed over landmasses, hinting at a belief that earthly and celestial realms mirrored each other. This wasn't primitive guesswork, it was an early system of meaning-making, as sophisticated in its own way as Ptolemy's later grids. Standing in the British Museum today, the tablet seems humble beside grander relics, but its power lingers in the questions it forces us to ask. How much of our own maps are shaped by unseen myths? What borders or centering biases do we accept without question? The Babylonians didn't just map land, they mapped meaning, turning clay into a canvas for both empire and eternity. And perhaps that's the real wonder, not that they got the world wrong, but that they dared to sketch it at all, one careful wedge mark at a time. Standing proudly in the heart of the Syrian desert, the Temple of Nabu at Palmyra is a silent sentinel of Mesopotamia's far-reaching influence, where the cultures of the Tigris-Euphrates Valley collided with the Roman world in a breathtaking fusion of styles. Though Palmyra lies hundreds of miles west of traditional Mesopotamian borders, this temple's very bones whisper of Babylon. Its towering columns and ornate pediments might seem classically Roman at first glance, but step closer. The layout is pure Mesopotamian, a rectangular sanctuary raised on a platform, echoing the ziggurats of Ur and Babylon, while the interior niches once held statues of Nabu himself, the Babylonian god of wisdom, his cult carried here by caravan traders along the Silk Road. This wasn't just a temple, it was a cultural crossroads where Aramean, Roman, and Mesopotamian traditions intertwined like the threads of a priceless tapestry. The temple's architectural details reveal its deep ties to the East. Unlike typical Roman temples, which were front-facing, Nabu's sanctuary followed the Mesopotamian tradition of axial symmetry. Worshippers entered through a series of gateways aligned with the rising sun, a design echoing Babylon's Ishtar Gate. The walls bore friezes of winged gennies, their curled beards and tiered skirts straight out of Assyrian palace reliefs, while inscriptions in Pomeran Aramaic name Nabu with his Babylonian epithet, scribe of the gods. Even the temple's orientation held meaning. Its doorway framed the constellation Orion, mirroring celestial alignments found in Sumerian temples 1,000 years older. Trade did more than transport goods, it carried entire worldviews, and the Temple of Nabu stands as proof that ideas could travel farther than the merchants who carried them. Yet this wonder's modern story is one of resilience and heartbreak. In 2015, as conflict engulfed Syria, militants targeted Palmyra's ancient treasures, reducing parts of the Temple of Nabu to rubble with explosives. The world watched in horror as columns that had stood since the 2nd century crumbled into dust. But here's where the tale takes an unexpected turn. Archaeologists, local volunteers, and international experts rallied to save what remained. Using a technique called anastylosis, they began painstakingly reassembling the temple's fragments, matching broken columns like a colossal jigsaw puzzle. The restoration process itself is a marvel. Original stones, some weighing tons, are being repositioned with 3D models guiding each piece. Missing sections are filled with reversible mortar, ensuring future generations can distinguish ancient from modern. Even the temple's famous lion statues, once guarding Nabu's altar, are being pieced together from shards no larger than a fist. But the real triumph isn't just in the physical rebuilding, it's in the way Palmyra's community has reclaimed their heritage. Elderly stonemasons who learned traditional techniques from their grandparents now train younger workers, passing down skills that trace back to Mesopotamia's master builders. What endures beyond the stones is the temple's testament to cultural exchange. Nabu's journey from Babylon to Palmyra mirrors the journey of ideas cuneiform evolving into Aramaic, ziggurats inspiring Roman temples, myths adapting to new land. The temple's scars tell a parallel story of destruction, yes, but also of the unbroken chain of memory that ties modern Syrians to their ancient past. As the sun sets over Palmyra, casting long shadows across the half-reconstructed columns, there's a quiet defiance in the air. The Temple of Nabu may have been forgotten by many, but like the god it honors, the divine scribe who recorded destinies, it refuses to let its story end. Etched onto cracked clay tablets in the dawn of writing itself, the Sumerian king list doesn't just record history, it defies it. Discovered across multiple Mesopotamian sites, this ancient manuscript presents a staggering parade of kings, their reigns stretching from plausible decades to mind-bending millennia. The earliest rulers, it claims, governed for tens of thousands of years, descending from the heavens to shepherd humanity before a catastrophic flood wiped the slate clean. Then, like clockwork, new dynasties rise, their reigns gradually shrinking to mortal lengths. Is this a factual chronicle, a sacred text, or something far more intriguing, a fusion of both, designed to legitimize power through divine precedent? The list's most baffling section details 8 antediluvian kings who supposedly ruled for a combined 241,000 years. The first among them, Alulim, is credited with 28,800 years on the throne. Such numbers seem absurd until you consider their symbolic weight. Scholars suggest these figures might encode astronomical knowledge, linking kings to celestial cycles, or reflect a time before standardized calendars, where years represented harvest cycles or dynastic eras rather than solar orbits. Alternatively, they could be political tools, inflating the antiquity of city-states like Kish and Uruk to assert their supremacy over rivals. Then comes the flood, a deluge so catastrophic it mirrors later biblical and epic of Gilgamesh accounts. The king list marks it as a divine reset, with post-flood reigns dropping sharply to centuries, then decades. This pivot hints at a profound cultural memory. Geological evidence confirms Mesopotamia endured violent flooding around 2900 before the Common Era, with sediment layers at revealing a waterborne destruction horizon. The list's flood narrative might distill generations of oral tradition into a single cataclysmic event, blending real disaster with mythic scale to explain the transition from legendary to historical time. What makes the king list truly revolutionary isn't its literal claims, but its structure. It organizes rulership into sequential hegemonies, where one city dominates until its kings are defeated or the gods withdraw favor. This wasn't just record-keeping, it was a theological assertion that kingship itself was a divine gift, passed between cities like a sacred torch. The list's repetitive phrasing, City A was defeated, its kingship carried to City B, reinforces this idea of rotating destiny, a concept later empires would weaponize to justify conquest. Modern excavations have unearthed partial corroborations. Some kings on the list, like Gilgamesh and Enmebarajsi, appear in independent inscriptions, proving they weren't pure inventions. Yet others remain ghosts, their names absent from archaeological records. This patchwork of verification suggests the list blends fact, myth, and propaganda, a reminder that ancient historians faced the same dilemmas as modern ones: how to weave fragments of truth into a coherent narrative when the past refuses to surrender all its secrets. Perhaps the greatest wonder here is the list's enduring grip on our imagination. It challenges us to reconsider what history meant to its creators, not just a tally of events, but a tapestry where lineage, divinity, and cosmic order intertwined. Those exaggerated reigns, they might be the Sumerian equivalent of once upon a time, a narrative device to anchor their present in a grander, more mysterious past. Holding a copy of the King List today, you're not just reading names, you're touching humanity's earliest attempt to answer the timeless question, where do we come from and who gets to decide? Unearthed from the ruins of Tel Brak in northeastern Syria, the eye idols stare across millennia with a gaze that feels unnervingly alive. These small, minimalist stone figurines, some no larger than a thumb, others as tall as a hand, share one chilling feature: enormous, hollowed-out eyes that dominate their faceless bodies. Carved between 3,300 and 3,700 years ago, they cluster by the thousands in what was once a temple, their blank yet penetrating stare raising more questions than answers. Were they offerings to the gods, protective talismans, or something far stranger? A physical manifestation of humanity's oldest fear, being watched, the idol's design is unsettling in its simplicity. Most are abstract, smooth, elongated bodies with a tapered base, their only distinct feature being those exaggerated, bowl-shaped eyes. Some have multiple sets, stacked vertically or clustered like celestial constellations. A rare few show faint etchings resembling robes or arms, but the eyes always dominate, as if the carvers sought to capture not a face, but the essence of sight itself. The material, locally sourced alabaster and limestone, was deliberately chosen for its ability to catch light, making the hollowed eyes gleam like wet stones in sunlight or torchlight. This wasn't casual artistry, it was ritual precision. Archaeologists first uncovered the idols in the 1930s, but their true scale only became clear decades later. Excavations revealed caches of hundreds buried together, often arranged in careful rows or nestled in temple niches. The most haunting discovery, a pit of eyes, a sunken chamber filled with broken idols, their disembodied eye fragments staring upward as if in silent accusation. The sheer volume suggests mass production, yet each bears subtle hand-tooled variations, hinting at individualized prayers or curses. But what purpose did these silent sentinels serve? One prevailing theory ties them to the all-seeing goddess Ishtar, whose cult thrived in the region. Texts describe her surveying humanity with unblinking scrutiny, and the idols may have served as physical proxies for her gaze, meant to ward off evil or channel divine oversight. Another hypothesis posits they were votive offerings left by worshippers seeking the god's attention. In a world where blindness equated to powerlessness, oversized eyes symbolized a plea, "See me. Protect me," yet the most spine-tingling interpretation comes from their discovery site. Tel Brak wasn't just any settlement, it was a crossroads of empires, a city frequently besieged. The idols cluster thickest near gates and walls, as if standing guard. Could they have functioned as a supernatural alarm system, their hollow eyes meant to watch for invaders, their placement a ritual fortification? Modern parallels exist: Mediterranean evil eye charms, Tibetan prayer flags with eye motifs, all designed to repel harm through the power of sight. The mystery deepens when you consider who made them. Unlike grand statues commissioned by kings, these idols appear in workshops and humble homes alike. Some show wear from constant handling, their edges smoothed by anxious thumbs. Were they carried in pockets, clutched during childbirth or battle? Their egalitarian spread suggests a belief so pervasive it transcended class, uniting a civilization under the quiet vigil of stone eyes. Today, the eye idols sit in museum cases, their original context lost to time. But their legacy lingers in the way they mirror our own world, a society obsessed with surveillance cameras, smartphone lenses, and the relentless gaze of social media. Perhaps their true power lies in this uncomfortable resonance, a reminder that the desire to be seen and the fear of what watches unseen is as ancient as civilization itself. The idols don't just stare, they dare us to ask who or what we're really looking for. In the heart of Syria's desert, the ruins of Marigard, one of Mesopotamia's most vivid time capsules, palace walls that pulse with color and life after nearly 4,000 years. The frescoes of Mari's royal palace aren't mere decorations. They're animated scrolls of Amorite civilization, their ochres and lapis blues miraculously preserved beneath layers of dust. Step into the throne room and you're surrounded by a symphony of movement. Muscular bulls charging through reeds, musicians strumming lyres, and ambassadors in flounced skirts presenting gifts to a king whose face, though faded, still exudes authority. These murals don't just depict history, they invite you to walk its halls, to hear the clatter of looms in textile workshops and the murmured negotiations of envoys from distant Babylon. What sets Mari's frescoes apart is their intimacy. Unlike the bombastic battle scenes of Assyrian reliefs, these walls celebrate the quiet rhythms of governance and craft. In one panel, scribes bend over clay tablets, their styluses poised mid-word, while nearby, a brewer stirs a vat of beer with the same solemn care as a priest performing rites. The investiture of Zimri Lim, the palace's crown jewel, shows the king receiving the rod and ring of power from the goddess Ishtar, but even here, the divine feels startlingly human. Ishtar's outstretched hand could almost be a mother guiding her child. The artists mastered something revolutionary, storytelling without borders. Scenes flow seamlessly into one another, their backgrounds left intentionally blank, as if the walls themselves were parchment waiting to be filled. The diplomatic scenes are where Mari's cosmopolitan soul shines. A procession of emissaries from Aleppo wears striped woolens distinct from Mari's own linen-clad nobles, their beards braided in foreign styles. One fragment captures a moment of laughter between two translators, their faces crinkled in amusement, a fleeting, unguarded instant immortalized in plaster. These weren't generic stock figures, they were portraits, some even labeled with names in cuneiform captions. The murals served a pragmatic purpose too, they subtly reinforced Mari's power. By depicting envoys from rival states bearing tribute, they broadcasted the kingdom's influence without a single chiseled boast. Yet the true marvel lies in the technique. The pigments ground malachite for green, hematite for red, imported lapis for blue were mixed with egg and resin to withstand humidity, a recipe so durable that some sections retain their gloss despite millennia of burial. The artists employed a true fresco method, painting onto wet plaster so the colors bonded chemically with the wall, a technique later perfected by Renaissance Italians. Even more astonishing, infrared imaging reveals underdrawings where compositions were revised, proving these were living works, adapted as alliances shifted and new ceremonies demanded commemoration. Mari's frescoes nearly vanished twice, first when Hammurabi's armies burned the palace in 1759 before the Common Era, ironically baking the plaster hard enough to preserve it, then in the 21st century when conflict threatened Syria's heritage. But local custodians risked everything to document and shield these masterpieces. Today, their survival feels like a covenant between past and present, a pledge that the ordinary moments of lives long gone, the musician's chord, the scribe's pause, the diplomat's handshake still matter. To stand before them is to realize that history isn't just carved in the exploits of kings, but painted in the daily acts that stitch a civilization together. Buried beneath the sands of Nippur, the religious heart of ancient Sumer, lies a treasure far more valuable than gold, the temple library, a sprawling archive where over 60,000 cuneiform tablets survived millennia to whisper the secrets of a civilization's mind. Unlike royal tombs or towering ziggurats, this library wasn't built to glorify kings or gods. It was a quiet sanctuary for knowledge itself, where priests meticulously catalogued everything from star charts to cough remedies, creating the world's first known systematic collection of human thought. Picture a scriptorium buzzing with activity, scribes hunched over damp clay, their reed styluses darting across tablets like needles stitching a tapestry of wisdom, while scholars debated celestial omens in hushed tones. This wasn't just storage, it was a living, breathing university centuries before the concept existed. The library's true genius lay in its organization, a system so intuitive it would feel familiar to modern librarians. Tablets were grouped by subject, shelved in labeled baskets, and even cross-referenced with catalog notes like "Where the Stars Are Explained" or "For Healing the Sick." Medical tablets alone reveal astonishing sophistication, precise descriptions of symptoms, plant-based prescriptions for everything from eye infections to depression, and even early surgical techniques. One fragment details a remedy for a wound infection using crushed turtle shell, and bear a formula later proven to contain natural antibiotics. Astronomy tablets tracked Venus's movements with near-perfect accuracy, their calculations so reliable they guided Babylonian sky watchers centuries later. But perhaps most touching are the literary tablets copies of the Epic of Gilgamesh, schoolboy exercises with scribbles in the margins, even love poems where the letters seem to pulse with emotion despite their rigid wedge shapes. What makes Nippur's library revolutionary isn't just its content but its ethos. Unlike later royal archives that hoarded knowledge for elites, this temple served as a democratized hub. Merchants consulted trade records, midwives studied childbirth protocols, and farmers pored over flood predictions. The scribes even left edition notes, updating old texts with corrections, proving they saw knowledge as fluid, evolving. This collaborative spirit echoes in unexpected ways. Some tablets bear colophons crediting their scribes by name, a radical act in an era when individual authorship was rarely acknowledged. Yet the library's survival is itself a marvel. When Nippur declined, its ruins were buried under layers of wind-blown silt, creating a time capsule untouched by looters. Archaeologists excavating in the 19th century found tablets stacked neatly in crumbling baskets, their edges still sharp, their words still legible, as if the priests had just stepped away. Among the most poignant discoveries were letter orders, administrative notes that humanized the past, a request for more lamp oil for late-night study, a complaint about missing temple supplies, even a scribe's doodle of a crouching cat beside a solemn legal text. The Nippur Library's legacy hums through history. Its medical texts influenced Greek physicians like Hippocrates, its star catalogues paved the way for Ptolemy's astronomy, and its literary fragments reshaped our understanding of early narrative. But more profound is its testament to how knowledge outlasts empires. While Sargon's conquests and Hammurabi's laws were etched in stone to awe the masses, these unassuming clay tablets fired by accident when invaders burned the city carried Sumer's soul intact across 40 centuries. They remind us that the true wonder isn't in towering monuments, but in the fragile, persistent act of writing down what we know and passing it forward, one careful wedge at a time. High in the jagged peaks of the Zagros Mountains, where the air thins and eagles circle like silent sentinels, stand the ruins of a forgotten defensive network fortresses so cunningly placed they seem to grow from the rock itself. These were Mesopotamia's eastern shield, a chain of stone strongholds built to guard against invasions from the highland tribes of Elam and Gutium. Unlike the grand palaces of Babylon or the sprawling temples of Ur, these mountain outposts were all function. No gold leaf or glazed tiles here, just sheer, unbreakable wood carved into cliff faces. To stand among their tumbled walls today is to stand at the frayed edge of an empire, where every scorched arrowhead and cracked cistern whispers of sieges weathered and wars waged in the clouds. The engineering behind these fortresses defies their harsh setting. At sites like Kale Bardeen and Izatu, masons shaped local limestone into walls 16 feet thick, their foundations wedged into natural crevices to resist earthquakes. Staircases were cut narrow and twisting, forcing attackers to climb single file under a rain of boulders and boiling oil from murder holes above, but the real stroke of genius. The water systems. In these arid heights, engineers carved channels to capture mountain springs, funneling water into hidden reservoirs that could sustain garrisons for months. One fortress at Shimbar still has its original clay pipes intact, a labyrinth of terracotta veins snaking through the rock like some ancient circulatory system. Legends cling to these stones. Cuneiform tablets tell of Queen Shamuramat, the historical figure behind the mythic Semiramis, who supposedly ordered a fortress built in a single night to halt an Elamite advance. Whether true or not, the tale reveals how these strongholds lived in the Mesopotamian imagination, as places where human grit could defy the impossible. Another account describes the Eagle's Nest, a citadel so inaccessible that defenders lowered baskets to haul up supplies, its location still debated by archaeologists. The Zagros wasn't just a barrier, it was a theater of psychological warfare where the mere sight of these impregnable walls could sap an invader's will. What's often overlooked is how these forts shaped Mesopotamia's identity. The highland vs. lowland divide wasn't just geographic, it was cultural. Babylonians saw the Zagros tribes as chaotic forces to be tamed, while mountain folk viewed the river valleys as soft lands ripe for plunder. The fortresses became liminal spaces where these worlds collided. Artifacts found in their ruins tell the story. Elamite pottery alongside Babylonian cylinder seals, proof that even in conflict, trade and ideas seep through the cracks. Today, reaching these ruins demands stamina. The path to Kael Bardin winds through Kurdish shepherd trails where goats clatter over fallen battlements. But the reward is a vantage point unchanged since centuries scanned the horizon for dust clouds signaling armies. From here, you can trace the zigzag of the Great Khorasan Road, the Silk Road's precursor that these forts were built to control. It's a humbling reminder that Mesopotamia's glory wasn't just born in its cities, but defended in these merciless heights, where stone and human resolve fused into something unbreakable. The mountains may have eroded their walls, but not their lesson. That civilization's light often burns brightest at its farthest, most fiercely guarded edges. For over 500 years, under the watchful night skies of Babylon, patient scribes etched meticulous records of celestial movements onto clay tablets, a scientific legacy so advanced it would shape astronomy for millennia. These Babylonian astronomical diaries aren't just ancient stargazing notes. They're the world's first systematic attempt to decode the universe's rhythms, blending precise observation with groundbreaking mathematics. Picture a dimly lit scriptorium where scholars tracked Venus's crescent, timed lunar eclipses down to the minute, and even noted weather conditions affecting visibility, all in cuneiform as sharp and deliberate as the stars they documented. What emerges from these tablets isn't merely data. It's the birth of empirical science, a relentless pursuit of patterns in the chaos of the cosmos. The diary's precision is staggering. One tablet from 323 before the Common Era records Jupiter's position with an error margin of less than 1 degree, a feat rivaling modern telescopic calculations. Another predicts a lunar eclipse by recognizing the Saros cycle, a repeating 18-year pattern of celestial alignments, but the real genius lies in their methodology. Unlike earlier cultures that viewed eclipses as omens, the Babylonians treated them as calculable events, developing formulae to project future occurrences. Their algorithms, encoded in step-by-step instructions, could pinpoint planetary movements years in advance with an accuracy Europe wouldn't match until the Renaissance. This wasn't astrology, it was proto-astronomy, a shift from fearing the sky to understanding it. Beyond celestial mechanics, the diaries offer snapshots of Babylonian life. A tablet from 236 before the Common Era notes a red glow around Mars coinciding with a revolt in Seleucia, blending cosmic and earthly history. Another documents crop prices alongside comet sightings, revealing how deeply astronomy intertwined with agriculture and economy. These scribes were the unsung polymaths of their age, part scientists, part historians, their work a bridge between the heavens and the marketplace. The diary's afterlife is equally remarkable. Fragments survived in the Library of Alexandria, where Greek astronomers like Hipparchus adapted their data to refine models of planetary motion. Later, Ptolemy cribbed their eclipse records for his Almagest, the Bible of medieval astronomy. Even Isaac Newton, centuries later, cited Babylonian lunar tables in his Principia. Yet the original scribes remain anonymous, their names lost to time, their legacy living on in every modern eclipse prediction and space probe trajectory. Today, these tablets endure as a testament to curiosity's power. They remind us that science isn't about flashy breakthroughs, but the quiet accumulation of knowledge, one careful observation, one calculated risk, one clay tablet at a time. In their cracked surfaces, we see the dawn of a radical idea, that the universe follows rules we can uncover, if only we dare to look up and count. From the towering ziggurats of Ur to the whispering reed houses of the marsh Arabs, Mesopotamia's forgotten wonders aren't just relics, they're the living roots of civilization itself. Each of these 25 marvels tells a story, the Ishtar Gate's cobalt brilliance proclaiming Babylon's might, the delicate fingerprints pressed into Dur-Kurogaltsu's bricks, the haunting gaze of the eye idols guarding secrets we're still deciphering. They gave us the first written words, the first legal codes, the first maps of the stars. Yet their true power lies not in being first, but in how they echo across time. The same canals that fed Sumerian fields inspire modern hydrologists. Hammurabi's laws still shape justice. The astronomical diaries of Babylon inform our voyages to Mars. But these wonders are more than history, they're invitations. To stand before the reconstructed Lamassu in the Louvre is to feel their silent watchfulness. To trace the cuneiform of the Epic of Gilgamesh is to touch humanity's oldest story. Even the ruins we can't visit, like the vanished city of Akkad or the ghostly canals of the Sealand dynasty, live on in museums worldwide, where tablets no bigger than a palm hold universes of meaning. That's why preserving them matters. When militants shattered Nimrod's walls, they didn't just destroy stone, they attacked the shared memory of who we are. Every fragment saved, every mural restored, is a victory against forgetting. So here's my challenge to you, seek these wonders out. Walk the halls of the British Museum's Mesopotamia Gallery, where the Lion Hunt Reliefs still roar. Visit Chicago's Oriental Institute and lock eyes with Queen Puobi's golden headdress, or journey to Iraq's rebuilt marshes where the Madden weave homes as their ancestors did 5,000 years ago. And if you can't travel, dive into the digital explore the University of Pennsylvania's 3D ziggurats or the British Library's tablet collections. Then tell me which marvel stopped you in your tracks. Was it the temple of Ninmak's healing lore, the brutal beauty of Ashurbanipal's hunts, or the quiet genius of those Babylonian star charts? Share your favorite in the comments, because history isn't just something we study. It's something we carry forward, one story, one wonder, one rediscovery at a time.